into another edition of the Daft on Draft podcast. I am your co-host, Cory Kinnan. Now 11 weeks deep into the college football season, hitting the home stretch here. We're loving what we're doing, still consistently 4 episodes a week. So keep tuning in, keep tapping in. We're putting some good stuff out. Before I bring Dalton in, though, I would be remiss, Dalton. Today is Veterans Day, and Dalton is one of my favorite veterans. So, Dalton, happy Veterans Day. How did you celebrate? How did you partake?
I watched so many running backs. I watched so many NFL draft running backs today, yesterday. But I did get to go to the gym. I got a nasty little chest and shoulder pump, which is one of my favorites. Got to take a nice walk, get a coffee. I borrowed my nephew, which I'm doing quite a bit now since I've been home and I don't have my son with me. Been taking him. So I took him for a nice walk on his tricycle and just had a nice relaxing day in front of a screen watching college football running backs. Just ad nauseum. It was so many. My eyes hurt.
I love it. That's a great way to kind of wind down and enjoy a day. But we have a pretty busy week 11 slate to talk about here. A lot happened.
Yeah.
A lot happened. I mean, a couple SEC schools might not even have a shot at the playoffs after we were talking like there's going to be 7 SEC schools in the playoffs. There's might be more Big Ten schools in the playoffs than SEC schools at this point in the season, which is a wild thing to say on a microphone. Because the SEC, it turns out, has just cannibalized itself. Georgia now a 2-loss team. LSU a 3-loss team now.
Mm-hmm.
Bama looks good again. Tennessee looks good again. Texas looks good again. Ole Miss now pushing for a playoff spot. Texas A&M's probably on the back burner looking in. It's just a messy landscape here. So let's go through the slate a little bit. Nothing really to talk about on Friday night. Caleb Johnson had an okay game. It was a very ugly game between UCLA and Iowa. It was just a turnover fest. But getting into Saturday a little bit. Oh, these games are not in time slot order. So we're just going to go through it the way that's listed on my screen here. Oregon, Maryland is first game on my screen. Dalton, I know you just ranked wide receivers, and I know that two of your top 10 receivers played in this game. Let's talk about those guys a little bit.
Evan Stewart. And I actually like Tez Johnson quite a bit as well. I think Tez has a very defined role at the next level because his size is, and Evan Stewart is not a very big human being either relative to NFL football players at 175-ish pounds, 5'11". Tez is even smaller than that. He's probably around 160. But two of the more explosive guys in college football between those two. But I really want to talk a little bit more about Ty Felton from Maryland, who I watched him last week when I watched to rank wide receivers, and you had talked him up a little bit. And I went in thinking it was going to be a letdown, and it was really anything but. Somebody his size. With his ability after the catch, I was really surprised at how good he was with the ball in his hands, being more of, a 6'2", 190-pound kind of burner type, you would think, like more of a downfield receiver. But I really like what he's able to do. I think he's a creative guy with the ball in his hands. And although I don't think he's super shifty, he has really good vision, follows blockers really well. So I thought he had a good game against probably the best defense that they'll face all year.
Yeah, Darius Slayton continues to be the comp that sticks out for me with him. Just that again, he does have the after the catch, but that linear explosiveness, the ability to just burn. I mean, he's going to run in the 4.3s.
Yeah,
in my opinion, he's going to run in the 4.3s. He's a fast dude. But this is a definite resume game for him, and so I'm glad to see that he racked it up a little bit. I didn't think Billy Edwards was really sharp in this game.
No.
But he continues to be my Heineke sleeper pick for next year. He's gonna go back to school. He's got another year, so why wouldn't he? He plays quarterback, so he's gonna pay him a lot of money. So, Ohio State, Purdue. I want to talk a little bit about my guy in this game, Marcus Bowe, because Marcus Bowe played really well in this game against those Ohio State pass rushers, right tackle for Purdue. I was texting you off air about this a little bit, and what just continues to stick out to me is how much I think this guy might be a center. Like everybody's projecting him to the interior, and I definitely agree with that. But at the end of the day, he's still listed at 6'3" and 300 pounds, which is small for a guard. Most guards sit around 315, 320. And I honestly just think that playing guard might be a little wasteful of his athletic ceiling as well, in my opinion. And this is kind of the way that I felt about Graham Barton last year. And the player comp for him that kind of sticks out to me is kind of Elgin Jenkins, who for Green Bay plays everywhere, wherever they need him to on a week-to-week basis. Not so much anymore, but like somebody's hurt, Elgin, just go play that position. Like, and I think that's kind of the same thing we might be looking at a little bit with Marcus Boa, like maybe Elgin light, because Elgin is a really freaking good player, and that's and what he does is hard to match. Where you can say right tackle, right guard, center, wherever, play me.
Well, even he struggles at that because he has spent a lot of his career with these little nagging injuries, and I do think we see that quite a bit with guys that move around like that, because you get so used to the way that you move at that position to then have to change that up. Even though athletically you can do it, your body is conditioned to kick step the other way with the other half of your body. And I think the guys really struggle, even, kicking inside to outside. You have to think it's a whole different movement set, and you're doing it at 100% against some of the best athletes in the world, and getting a little bit out of a position that you're not normal or not used to being in. Knee injuries, hamstring injuries, like these little things that can pile up on you when you change a position, like Jenkins or Elton does.
Yeah, for sure. But like for Bo, I just think like his athletic ability, his ability to climb, his ability to get wide, and how mean he is. And again, that stuff translates to guard, sure. But like he's best with his hands, and I think his hands are phenomenal. So why not erase set depth like almost entirely and let him jump everybody? Let him jump everybody. And not only that, like when you're picking up stunts and games from guard, it's easier to count off to half the side of the field. Like you can anticipate a little bit, but it's easier to count off from half the side of the field and kind of anticipate where games and stunts are going to come from. Centers kind of have to be prepared to take it from both sides. I don't know if there's a cleaner way I could have said that, whatever. They're prepared to take it from both sides. So they have to be able to have that recovery ability, that redirect ability to stay light on their feet and to change direction swiftly and pick up delayed pressures games from all over. And so when I watch him, I was like, man, and again, he's 300 pounds, listed at 300 pounds. So, and he does look a little small on tape. So when I watched that, I was like, this guy might be a center. And if he is a center, he might be the best one in the class.
Maybe. Parker's playing really well this year.
He is, dude, but he's 285.
I know. I know.
That. Yeah. But I did want to shout out Marcus there a little bit there. That's true. Feed him.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, just to touch on Marcus real quick, the hip swivel for me, like his ability to open up so easily and explode out of that is something that you do not see in offensive linemen very often. Hell, I've struggled to see it in a bunch of running backs that I just watched over the past couple of days. So for me, seeing somebody that moves like that, especially when you talk about being able to kind of account for and do the math for both sides when it comes to stunts and games, that recoverability with his hips, I think would be really important for the center position as well.
Yeah. Have you noticed? I don't know if you've noticed on tape, dude. He does this funny thing where he fake jump sets somebody and then will kick back into his set. So he'll like get the edge to like pop up and like anticipate a jump set and then he'll kick set back. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen, but he does it really well.
Yeah.
Anything else from this Ohio State Purdue game that stood out from the Ohio State side now, since that's the only guy on the Purdue side to really talk about? This was business as usual.
Yeah, no, possibly the best player in the country is 18 years old, plays wide receiver for them.
Broke Chris Carter's record for most touchdowns for a freshman receiver in Ohio State history. No big deal. It's not a name or anything like that. Georgia, Ole Miss. Now this one, boy, did you see the Carson Beck Snapchat?
No.
Oh my gosh. After the game, somebody took a picture of somebody else's phone that he had sent a Snapchat to that said, "Run me over with my car, please, so I don't have to play football anymore."
So that's somebody who is having a bad time, right?
Yeah,
now.
he's not having a great time at all playing football. I don't see it. Like he wants to rip everything up the hashes, but he's throwing them right to the chest of linebackers.
Yeah,
and robbers. Like it's.
I don't know what he's doing at this point.
I don't either. I don't know.
And that's the problem is like it was there. We had it. Like to me, this feels like a corner who has just absolutely lost their confidence. Like you're just not going to cover somebody if you are not.
There's one of those at Ohio State right now.
Freakishly confident in what you're doing out there.
Yeah.
And he tried to do a little bit too much early in the year, and it has just spiraled downhill.
Yeah.
And we talked about this earlier in the year. It's the Mac Jones thing, man, where if you want to take the next step, you have to be able to make plays outside of structure. And he took that as everything that I'm doing right now that makes me great. I need to be this other guy.
Yeah.
And he just can't do it. Just flat out cannot do it.
No, it's rough to watch. It's very rough to watch. From a defensive line perspective, and we'll touch a little bit on this later when we get to some helmet stickers, but that Ole Miss defensive line played the way that we have been talking about this Ole Miss defensive line.
I'm so sick and tired of going back and forth between Kentucky and South Carolina and Ole Miss and Georgia, and who has the best defensive line, because they all seem to have four absolute monsters. Monsters. The Ole Miss defensive line was fantastic in this game. Like you said, they've been kind of fantastic all year. I think Princely's really starting to turn it on. Ivy on the other side has been fantastic. And the broadcast was just enamored with Paez. Enamored with him.
Dude, I love him so much.
Dude, they were talking.
He's my trophy from this class. Like, look at this is my guy. This is my boy. This is awesome.
You had Princely absolutely dogging the left tackle, and all they could talk about was, is he going to play offense? He's going to play offense. And he went out on offense, and he did not know the play or where to line up, and then timeout.
Oh, he's so much fun. Yeah, he had a carry for 9 yards in this game, 7 of which were after contact. So
yeah, of course.
That's
300 pounds almost.
Oh man, I love it. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about some of those other contributors in that game once we get to some helmet stickers. But Georgia now faces what I think is probably an uphill battle to make the college football playoffs here. They're not going to play in an SEC championship game. Maybe they sneak in the back end, but boy, didn't really anticipate that.
No, I didn't anticipate them losing to Ole Miss.
No, especially not in that fashion. They got dominated.
Dog walked.
They got dog walked big time in that game. Speaking of another game we didn't anticipate a team losing, and maybe we spend a little bit of time here talking about Miami and Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech, team that'll punch you in the mouth.
Yeah.
And that's what they did, and they control the ball because they literally cannot pass the ball. So it's just 3-4 yards, 5 yards, pick up a first down on third down, keep the clock moving. They had like a 10-minute drive in this game. Man.
Yeah.
That is a fun football team to watch.
Yeah, they are. They for sure are. They have an identity.
And we've been
I don't want to harp about it too much.
Year.
And I don't want to harp about it too much. But all of the things that I've been saying about Cam Ward, that I wrote about Cam Ward, Miami fans, they kind of all came true in this game, all the way down to the last play of the game, which is the perfect encapsulation of the Cam Ward experience, where he is spooked by a three-man rush, starts running around back there, and fumbles the football to end the game. He's now fumbled the football 4 times in his last 6 games in conference play. To me, this is the exact same player that we've been watching at Washington State. A guy who we thought was like, maybe late 3rd, early 4th. He's better than that now. I'll give him that. And especially with the quarterback bonus, sure. I'll probably throw a 2nd round grade on the guy. Maybe a 3rd round grade on the guy, because what I've seen over the past 3 games, Florida State, Duke, and now this one has not been pretty. This is the same guy that we saw at Washington State, man. And I don't want to, again, I'm harping on it more than I said that I would, but man, it's just, it's a larger picture of the quarterback class as a whole of how these guys are playing. But any team that drafts Cam Ward isn't going to be able to give him the thing that he needs most, which is time. Unless this is a complete Malik Willis situation where everybody in the industry overestimated Malik Willis's draft stock by 2 full rounds. So unless it's one of those situations where everybody is just grossly misinterpreting what his draft stock actually is in the eyes of the NFL, then yeah, he's going to get time. But by all accounts, I don't think that's going to be the case.
No, I mean, I think he probably goes to the Raiders in the top 10 and has to play right away. Now, I've kind of talked about it. I talked about it in my mock where I gave him to the Jets. It's like, give him the runway that he needs. Let Aaron Rodgers go out there and darkness retreat himself into oblivion, and have Tyrod Taylor and have Tyrod kind of take him under his wing. Mm-hmm. Teach him how to be a pro. Teach him how to functionally process information after the snap. And get the ball out on an NFL timeline, because that's what this is all about. You can sit there and you can say, and it's true, that team would not be anywhere near undefeated if it weren't for Cam Ward. Absolutely not. They're not a great football team. They're a terrible football team defensively.
And their offensive line, yeah.
The offensive line is not good. But his game is not an NFL quarterback's game. It's just not. It's kind of the same deal that we saw with Zach Wilson.
Yep. That is my comp for him.
Same thing that we saw with Malik. I think that they're similar players. It's create, it's run around, make these highlight reel plays. And Cam Ward might be the highlight play guy out of all of them, even Zach Wilson. But at the end of the day, quarterback play is 80 to 90% boring as hell. Mm-hmm. That's what separates Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and these guys and Lamar. It's not the athletic ability, the rushing ability. A lot of different guys can do that. Jalen Milroe is a perfect example of somebody who just not there as a passer might be the most dangerous weapon in college football. But that doesn't mean he's going to have success at the NFL level, because you have to be able to survive as a quarterback. And that's something that every single time conference play has come around, we've gotten the conference version of Cam. Great college football player, the most exciting in the game, and the leader at quarterback for Heisman Trophy voting. Doesn't make him QB1. Doesn't make him a first-round player. Even if that's what the draft capital ends up being for him, in my opinion, it's a mistake, because he needs a runway.
Yeah, I've been pretty staunch that this is a one quarterback class, and I just feel like that continues to solidify the more that the season goes on. Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about a couple more games here, because we still got some helmet stickers to get to. Again, 5, 6, 7 all took care of business on teams they should have beat. Let's talk about Indiana, man. Curtis Rourke still doing his thing. Again,
gutsy.
He's gutsy, man. He is. Michigan tried to punch back there, and they did in that second half.
Yeah, but the defense played really well in the second half.
Yeah, but Indiana pulled through. If you talk about Indiana, and again, some of these teams are underachievers at this point in the year, but their last 3 games, man, they have grinded out wins against tough programs historically. And so, like, they have put themselves in the position now where, like, if they beat Ohio State, they're going to play in a Big Ten title game. Yep. Like, that's an amazing story. To come out against Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State, and Michigan, blow the doors off of 3 of those teams, and then scrap out a win against by all accounts, still a tough Michigan football team.
Another defensive line that is fantastic.
Yes, it is. And
best corners in college football. Like, that is a talented defense.
Yeah. And Will Johnson hasn't played much, which is, whatever.
Yeah.
And he didn't play in this one. But still, now they're number 5 in the nation. Now they get the right to play Ohio State for the right at a Big Ten championship game. In the first year of a new head coach, with a bunch of 4th and 5th year guys who, like, they might have 3 or 4 draftable players on that roster. Like, that team is not overly. I probably undersold that a little bit.
No, I don't know if you did.
But that team is not like loaded. They have 0 5-stars. They're not loaded with like brand name players at all. They don't have any brand name players. Their starting quarterback is a 6th-year guy who played 5 years in the MAC. Like, it's just a well-coached team, and they're playing really good football. So I'm not sleeping on this game against Ohio State because I've been critical of how Ohio State is coached and the toughness that Ohio State has displayed against some of the better teams in the nation. So we'll see how this plays out, man. But I'm excited for Saturday for that game. And I'm just excited for the Hoosiers for putting themselves in this position to compete for a Big Ten title in the first year of the Cignetti era.
It's so much fun, man. This college football season has been so much fun. I love this new era of college football. I love the cannibalization. I love teams like Colorado and Indiana kind of coming out of nowhere and being really good college football programs because of the transfer portal. Makes it fun.
It's so much fun. Yeah, we can the Colorado stuff.
Because the Indiana thing in NIL.
No, and Colorado is sure they get a lot of players because of their brand, but I mean, we're talking about a Colorado team that like was in a dogfight with an FCS team in week 1. They lost to Nebraska pretty handedly early in the season. They're in a position to play in a Big 12 championship game because they're playing really good football right now. Really consistent football offensively as well and defensively. They've got some talent on the defensive side of the ball. But last game, I think we should probably spend a little bit of time talking about is the Alabama LSU game here. Boy, another dog walking in the SEC. And a game that I thought was going to be pretty close because I thought Alabama's defense doesn't typically attack Nussmeier the way that Nussmeier struggled against Texas A&M, the way that he was kind of seeing ghosts against South Carolina a little bit. But Nussmeier still kind of saw ghosts in this one and now sits with 9 interceptions in his last 5 games. Alabama wins this one 42-13. Milroe had a real nice bounce back though. Again, I need to chart the game and kind of sit down and watch, but the 4-3 athlete was on display. That's for sure in this one.
Yeah, believe he was the fastest runner of the week, according to Real Analytics. It was like 21.9 miles an hour, 20.9 or something like that. And I tweeted it out, but teams will have him graded as a running back. It's one of those things where like we hear these things, but I don't want to report like teams have him rated as a running back because at the end of the day, I don't know if they actually do or not, but it wouldn't surprise me because and for me, is it disregarding everything that he does as a quarterback, or is it just like a nod to you are an absolute freak of nature and then it's actually a positive? Because for me, it's this kid should absolutely go back to school. But even if you didn't believe in him at all at quarterback, he's getting drafted as a running back if he declares 100%. At his size, with his explosiveness, his vision, which he gets to show all of the time.
It's very
creativity,
it's so good.
Contact balance. I mean, there is nothing that when you look at him outside of just pure running back vision, there's nothing to say that he couldn't be a great one.
He might be RB2 in this class if he was a running back behind just Jancy. Like he might be RB2, the way that he runs football. But again, he's given himself that right to be drafted as a quarterback, and he's going to be. Again, I do also think that he should go to school, but I wouldn't be shocked if this is kind of a situation like Jalen Hurts, where people, and again, Jalen Hurts was never talked about switching positions because I don't think Jalen Hurts is that kind of athlete, but where he gets drafted in the second round and some team takes the chance and says, hey, we'll let you sit. We'll work some things around you. And then by the time he does take over as the starter, like they build the offense around this guy of what this guy can do well and what this guy, and kind of covering up some deficiencies of what he can't. And you might be cooking. Again, it's going to take a creative mind to do that still, in my opinion. Because we've talked about it, like the past 2 weeks were really bad quarterback play, like very bad quarterback play. I'm not prepared to talk about how the quarterback play in this one. I know he didn't do a whole lot through the year in this game, but I'm not going to talk about what he did on those reps where he did throw the football because I haven't charted it yet and I haven't looked yet. But he's earned that right, and who knows? The NFL might be buku high on this guy because of the traits. But man, that game was something else. 185 yards on the ground, though. That's pretty bizarre. That's pretty bizarre. But I'm excited to watch the trench play in that game because I talked a lot about the Alabama defensive end, LT Overton, and those LSU tackles. So I'm excited to kind of check that out as well. My daughter turned 1 this weekend. I was out of town all weekend doing a lot of fun stuff. So just haven't watched anything yet. But I am excited to turn that on as well. Anything else from that game that stands out to you?
No.
Cool.
Nope. Let's get to helmet stickers.
Helmet stickers. So, Dalton, why don't you go first?
Let's do it. Didn't get real creative this week. Didn't go outside of the box, really. And we have a repeat winner from last week as well. He had a huge game against Texas A&M a week ago. He had a big game against Vandy, tough football team that wants to punch you in the mouth. He again had over 100 yards after contact in this game, long of 39 yards. He had 4 of 10 plus. He didn't fumble the ball this week either, like he did last week, and he had 2 15-plus yard runs. I did sit down and watch this one. I watched the running backs this week, like I said, and Raheem is one of the guys who I've kept my eye on now for what feels like 3 years. The size was always something that stood out. He was like listed at 235 in the early days. I think he's now at 230 or 225. I do think that he's lost a step or two overall, but he still somehow, with the lost step, with not having great wiggle or explosiveness, still finds ways to create explosive runs with relative consistency. And so for me, somebody who isn't going to have necessarily a very high ceiling at the NFL level, but is somebody who I think can be a part of a rotation. On top of flashing some really nifty hands, he made a catch along the sideline. I think it was against Texas A&M, where he actually caught, looked down, and did a little toe drag along the sideline. So a little bit of an all-around skill set with him as well.
He's a fun player. I'm going to stick with running back as well here. Again, I'm going to stay a little bit generic here, but we haven't given him a helmet sticker, and I think we just deserve to talk about this guy again. But man, Ashton Janty, 208 yards and 3 touchdowns, 6 yards per carry, 114 yards after contact. It's getting repetitive at this point with this guy. It's just getting repetitive, up to 1,700 yards and 23 touchdowns on the season. Just an unbelievable. And here's the craziest thing. Maybe not the craziest thing. I think probably the 1,700 yards and 23 touchdowns is the craziest thing. But also bizarre about like his transition to the NFL. And this is PFF starting, so we can talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. Whatever. Whether you trust it or not. But what PFF has him charted at, 113 zone reps, 111 gap reps. He can do it all. Like, he is scheme diverse, elite contact balance, elite explosiveness, elite long speed. Like, I watched this guy. I finalized him. You did the same thing. There are not 5 better players in this draft class. There might not be 3 better players than him in this draft class. He's just unbelievable. Unbelievable player. And again, against Nevada, 208 yards, 3 touchdowns, as Boise State still holds on to the at-large bid for the college football playoffs.
Yeah, I watched him, obviously, and I came away with it thinking that he is the most complete back I've ever watched. Like, Saquon was a bigger freak. Chubb, I think, was a better runner. I think he's still the best runner I've ever seen, but he didn't have what we have with Chainty when it comes to his ability as a pass catcher. We didn't really have that at Georgia. And so when you see what Chainty's able to do there, on top of being a really good pass protector, and shout out to this running back class just in general, because there are a lot of dudes who really have a lot of fun in pass protection. But he is one of those guys, man, you just really cannot poke a hole in his game, because even though he is 5'8", he does have that long speed. Mm-hmm. And he's not Jahmyr Gibbs 4.3 speed, but he is not going to get just flat out caught from behind. And for him to do it against Oregon, and for that to, now we know be against the best team in the country. And for him to almost single-handedly keep them in that football game really shows how freaking important he is. And maybe you can consider giving the Heisman to not a quarterback this year, which it's looking like it won't happen finally.
Well, Dylan Gabriel still playing well, and I think it might be like a wear down vote. It would be disgusting. But yeah, it needs to be.
And I like Dylan Gabriel a lot more than I should, but
it would be a gross vote for Gabriel over a running back with 1,700 yards and 23 touchdowns.
What we're not done yet.
In 9 games. 9 games. Jeez, man. So yeah, I've graded him as well. I think the only like real weakness is I thought he was a little stiff in the ankles when he went to turn the corner. Like that's the only thing.
Ball security is about the only other one too, because and it's not even really awful. I think he fumbles it at about every 95 touches, which is still like kind of above average. But it's like the only real blemish in his game.
Yeah, unbelievable player. My second one, let's talk about an Indiana player. And I had an agent tell me about this guy a couple weeks ago, and I had watched him because I had done some consulting in the past where, I'd watched him at Kent State before he transferred to IU. But we're talking about nose tackle CJ West. I love a good nose tackle, dude. I love a good one tech. 6'2", 317. Dude's a bowling ball. But he's phenomenal as a pass rusher. And he's racked up 17 pressures from one tech this year in the Big Ten. In this game alone, though, as both a run defender and as a pass rusher, I had talked about coming into the game that I was interested to see Indiana against Michigan because I felt like Michigan is the only team that had the prowess in the trenches to really punch Indiana in the mouth that they haven't seen before. And in this game, their nose tackle racked up 7 pressures and 5 stop tackles. And for those who are listening that don't know what a stop tackle is, it's a PFF metric for tackles that result in a negative, that end in a negative result for the ball carrier, for the offense. So like a 2nd and 8, if it's 2 or 3 yards, like that's a stop tackle. If it's 3rd and 1, like a negative play would obviously be if they stuffed them on 3rd and 1, things like that. So it's dependent on context and down a distance, but 5 stop tackles, 5 tackles that ended in a negative result for the offense in this game. That's a dominant performance, and in the biggest resume game of his season. We're talking about a day 3 nose tackle still, obviously, because one techs don't get drafted high unless you have like that elite explosiveness and heavy hands. Like Travis Jones was a one tech at UConn, and Travis Jones was my DT2 that year. And somehow he still fell to the 3rd round, and now Baltimore has another heck of a player. Like they always seem to get. But like for the most part, 1Ts are going to fall. So this is a day 3 player, and he's going to be a really fun day 3 player for a team, a really fun nose tackle for a team. So CJ West gets a helmet sticker here.
Yeah, my second one is Abdul Carter. I think this is the 2nd week in a row that Abdul Carter got one as well, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
Yeah, it is.
Because you gave it to him last week.
Yep.
Anyways, man, he is really starting to turn it on here at the end of the year. I know it's always interesting to see kind of where guys are looking at when it comes to like consensus boards and things like that. But it's funny how sometimes this stuff can get cyclical, where Abdul Carter starts off, over the summer, Dane has him as his number 2 player. All of a sudden, obviously, everybody talks about how good Abdul Carter is at the top. And then he starts off the season a little bit slow. And then you start to hear a little bit about Nick Gordon. You start to hear a little bit about James Pierce and all these other guys, Shamar Stewart. And then Abdul Carter comes back around, starting to get later into conference play, and he starts to turn it on. Starts coming off the edge, real hot, really being used well as a blitzer. On the interior for that team as well. I mean, he's got just that unbelievable, instant transmission, ability to close on ball carriers. And that type of athleticism is top 5 stuff. It doesn't really matter how much you still have to learn as a pass rusher. When the Cowboys took Micah Parsons, it wasn't about being a pass rusher. It was about being a linebacker who could blitz. And then he ended up playing a little bit on the edge and was amazing at it without having a ton of nuance. Who he is as a player now is completely different from where he was as a rookie, even though his production hasn't really gone up since his rookie year, his efficiency as a rusher. But he has gotten better as a pass rusher over time. And I think when you look at guys like Jalen Walker in this class, when you look at guys like Abdul Carter, the more you get them those edge reps and the more you don't have them worry about linebacker and just let them be athletes, that's when you can really unlock these guys the most.
Yeah, and we had talked about last week that he's my dark horse to potentially go number 1 overall if one of these non-QB needy teams get that pick. So I mean, New England won and they dropped to 7th in but again, they're a game out of the first overall pick. Jacksonville currently holds the first overall pick. Jacksonville's not taking a quarterback. No. But again, these quarterback needed teams are starting to come up the board. Like the Giants, Tennessee, Cleveland, Vegas sit 2, 3, 4, 5 right now. So like odds are Shador's probably going to go number 1 by the time of the draft. But yeah. I mean, maybe not, because it sounds like Jacksonville might shut Trevor Lawrence down for the season. If they shut Trevor Lawrence down for the season, and you're right,
they might not win another game.
They might not win another game. Yeah. So again, if
I don't know, do they play the Cowboys this year?
That's true.
Man. Or the Giants? They could probably beat the Cowboys and the Giants.
Yeah. But yeah, just following trends, like corners don't go number 1 overall. Again, Travis Hunter is a very special player, very different player than we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
So he could be a trend breaker where he does go number 1 overall if a non-quarterback needy team gets the pick. But for the most part, it's defensive tackles, it's edge rushers, or it's offensive tackles. And we've talked about offensive tackles. Mason Graham, sure, that he might be a sleeper now as well, but like, we're probably looking at an edge. I would say we're looking at an edge, and right now that's probably Abdul Carter. So
yeah, I mean,
dominant player.
It could be Graham, but I don't know if the NFL is seeing Graham in that
the way
light.
We do. Really?
Well, not even like that. But I'm talking about like number 1 overall type stuff.
Yeah, you got to be like Ndamukong Suh level player, like a Heisman finalist, defensive tackle.
Like I don't think the pass rush production is necessarily there, even though we all see it. Yeah. We all know that he has it. So
I don't know if I've ever seen a defensive tackle with his ankles as flexible as his, but yeah, I love it. Following up on that, no, you go ahead. You do your third because we'll snake that. You do.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about him. It's Travis Hunter. And just like,
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another game of 1 target, 1 catch for 5 yards. That's playing defense, and he played 89 defensive snaps. And then on the offensive side of the ball, he was targeted 16 times, had 9 catches and 99 yards and a touchdown on offense. He's
special, man.
We've never seen anything like this. We've never seen anything like this. And to top it off, he played 74 offensive snaps. So 74 offensive snaps and 89 defensive snaps. It's insane. It's insane. He is overall 1. He is my wide receiver 2, which, listen, after we talked about him in the summer, I did not believe it. But what I've seen from him this year, first of all, they're asking him to do more as a wide receiver this year. His hands, his ball skills are already some of the nuttiest I've ever seen in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
He has everything in his makeup as an athlete to continue to improve as a route runner, although I think he's already getting better in that aspect. And he has the athletic profile to be a natural separator and a weapon with the ball in his hands, because he has some of the best X-ray vision, or I'm trying to think of the way that he feels defenders coming at him, and the way that he is able to plan out his next move as the ball is coming, because his hands are so good, his concentration is so outrageous. He's able to understand exactly what he needs to do to break that first tackle as the ball is coming to him. He doesn't have to think about it. There are no concentration drops because it is absolutely natural for him to be doing all of this. And he's doing all of this at 2 different positions. It's outrageous. And we talked about G&T. We talked about how crazy his season has been and how he is absolutely deserving of the Heisman Trophy Award. But I still think I have to give it to Travis.
I would agree with you if the Heisman was a tape-oriented award and not a box score-oriented award.
Yeah.
I would agree with you.
Or a value-oriented award.
Yeah, or a value-oriented award.
If it was a value-oriented award, I don't think that anybody in college football, for any team, is more important than Travis Hunter, who is not a quarterback.
Yeah. It's bizarre. It's invaluable, and you can literally see him as a receiver. He's asking himself, how would I attack me? Because he plays freaking corner. He asked himself, how would I attack me? And he anticipates it. Yeah, it's bizarre. We won't see anything like this for a very long time. He might go down as the best college football player of all time, but it won't show in a box score because he's playing 150 snaps a game.
He's so unbelievably intelligent.
Yes.
As a football player.
Yes. Unbelievable.
Patrick Surtain, for me, is like the only guy that I can really think of that had that type of football know-how and knowledge and just ability to run your route for you. Like Patrick Surtain was so good that people legitimately wondered how fast he was because he never had to actually try because he was never out of position enough to have to catch up.
And then newsflash, he's probably the best corner in the NFL right now.
Yeah. And he did all that at 205 pounds.
Yeah.
Freak.
Bizarre player.
But Travis Hunter, man, I've never seen anything like it. I don't think I will see anything like it. I mean, this is a cat who was the top recruit in the country, went to Jacksonville State.
Jackson State, yeah.
Jackson State because of Deion. And then ends up being Deion. Like literally is this generation's Deion Sanders.
Yes.
Might be the better overall corner and is probably already a better wide receiver than Sanders ever was at receiver. Now, not as a return man or anything, but just simply as a receiver.
Travis got to start playing baseball now, I guess.
Yeah.
He's going to start playing baseball. But yeah, like Charles Woodson won a Heisman. He was not doing this. Champ Bailey was not doing this, even though he's playing both sides of the ball. Chris Gamble was not doing this at Ohio State. Like, we haven't seen it's bizarre. It's crazy. My last helmet sticker is a player that we both have like talked about that we really like this guy, and we've just been waiting for him to finally put it all together and take that next step. For 3 years, he's a 5th-year senior now. And boy, these last 3 games, he has racked up 17 pressures alone in 3 straight games and 6 sacks in 3 games against Oklahoma, Arkansas, and now Georgia. Against Georgia, 6 pressures, 2 sacks. And again, we've talked about how... I don't know
if 6 pressures is enough.
It might not be. Princely Umanmielen was the player of the game in this game. He was a one-man wrecking crew in this football game. They could not block him. And I've talked about how Georgia's interior is good with Fairchild and Wilson and Ratledge, but those tackles are the worst tackles I've seen at Georgia in a very long time. And especially left tackle Ernest Green is a guard, and he's shorter, he's stubbier, and boy, did the long and athletic Umanmielen take advantage of that. Like, oh my goodness. He's got a long arm. He's bendy at that size too for how long he is. Unbelievable game on the biggest stage, the biggest resume game of his career. Let's see how this plays out a little bit. Ole Miss is pushing for the playoff spot now. Like, he might be pushing for back end of the first round because he's going to test off he's going to test off the chart. So we're talking back end first round now with Princely here down the stretch. And he came in with kind of that hype too before the season as well.
Yeah, and he's added like 15 pounds in the past 3 or 4 years to his frame, and it hasn't been bad weight. So he's working. Maybe wish he would work a little bit more on his technical proficiency. Yeah. But you're right, man. He's got that sort of bend, explosiveness, outside rushing ability. And then to be that at 255 pounds, 260 pounds maybe, and be able to set the edge as well as a run defender, just physically is big time. That's something that you can work with as an NFL team. And the athleticism to drop into coverage as well as a stand-up guy.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely, indeed. So that's our helmet stickers for this week. And a loaded slate. Oh, that was
we
a
talked
fun
a
slate.
lot of college football.
We did. Whew. Again, we'll be back tomorrow for Daft or Draft. We'll be back Wednesday. I think we're going to start talking about our big board a little bit, whether we do our first 5, first 10, and then go from there. But we'll start talking about who our top graded players in this class are and work out from there. Getting some positional rankings as we really start grading these out. I know PFN's got you grinding out these guys like crazy. So you have a conveyor belt of scouting reports at this point, way ahead of me. But we're going to start building this thing out, man. So it's exciting. The best time of the year. But that's it. Dalton, anything you want to add?
No.
Close the book here.
Love you guys. Excited to be back for Daft or Draft tomorrow. That's all I care about. That and getting my eyes back to normal. Because once again, they really dried out overnight and are bright red. So fun times.
Yeah. Is it like a Midwest thing? Like, is the Midwest like temperament different than Portugal that it's like causing flare-ups or something? Or
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the hell's going on with my eyes right now. It's like 1 year out of every like 4 or 5, it'll just be really bad for no reason. So I guess it's that year.
Yeah. Well, until tomorrow, we hope Dalton's eyes are better. But this has been the Daft on Draft podcast.